Well, welcome back to Technician to CEO. Today I am joined by AC Lockyer, and many of you know him. He is the owner and founder of Softwash Systems, and very well known in the industry. AC, thanks so much for hopping on and having a chat, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, just in case someone hears this, and we do talk to people outside of this industry, tell me just kind of a brief synopsis. What is Softwash Systems? Just kind of give me the brief overview.
Absolutely. So, Softwash Systems, we are a company that puts people in the soft washing business. We are not a franchise. We kind of brag that we're an unfranchised. But what we do is we support entrepreneurs in a kind of a business incubator kind of way. We give them the tools and the resources that they need to start a soft washing business. We have equipment and we have chemicals. That is not our secret sauce. We're very, very good at business systems, education, training, just the soup to nuts business in the box aspect of launching successful service businesses. And the product that we sell is soft washing, which is the alternative to pressure washing. Instead of the blowing and blasting of pressure washing, we use water-based biodegradable chemicals, spray those on exterior surfaces. They emulsify dirt and grime, kill what's growing on the surface, sanitizing the surface to where it can just be rinsed away with just regular garden hose style pressure, and lasts about 4 to 6 times longer, uses about 1/3 the water of pressure washing. And we've been extremely successful with it. I was a contractor for 20 years, owned my own soft washing business, built it up to $4.8 million per year, and then had a really nasty family business breakup, tragic turn of events. It was awful at the time. It ended up being a wonderful blessing in disguise. Kind of slid me over to what I'm doing now, which is much more purposeful. And so we've got about 220 in-network companies in 9 countries, doing about $100 million in revenues now. So it's just unbelievable.
That is really, really cool how you took your experience from building a business and you've built a business around helping others. So I follow you a little bit on social media, and I saw you guys just got back from a pretty extensive trip.
Yes. Yeah, so we went to Europe for a month. I tried to tell everybody I was working, but nobody quite believed me.
Well, all the pictures of the beautiful scenery and hanging out at castles and eating great food, it kind of confuses people about,
Yes,
the whole working and traveling thing, right?
It's tough. Some of us have to really sacrifice to live that type of lifestyle, but yeah. It was a great trip, I'm a big relationships person, so a lot of the business I do is through relationship. And we have distributors as well as in-network companies over there. I am a partner in another Softwash Systems regional service center over in England by the Eurotunnel. And so we were there for work, I promise. I mean, Monday through Friday, we were hitting it hard, working 12 hours a day. But then on the weekends, you get to go look at cathedrals and castles and tour around and do tourism stuff. And it was a lot of fun.
I think that is really cool. I know for a lot of guys and girls, I'm so bad about that.
Hey, guys is a universal term, especially from the Northeast. It means everybody. You guys.
Yeah. Thank you. And here in the Southeast, it's y'all.
It's y'all.
That's everybody, right?
So use guys is a Northeast thing, and y'all is a Southeast thing. So you're
and
perfectly
it's everybody.
Good. Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like the dream to be able to live that lifestyle, and you've come a long ways. But like you said, it's a huge journey. It's to go from the beginning to there. So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story in that initial business that you built. Like, how did you end up in business? Tell me just a little bit. Kind of start me at the beginning, if that's okay.
Sure. So, if we went all the way back to the beginning, back to childhood, and I'll just do a brief synopsis of that because a lot of people have self-limiting beliefs of what they're capable in their lives. A Lockyer male had never graduated from high school. I was not a good student. I've got ADD diagnosed. I've got OCD diagnosed. I've always struggled in school. In Seminole County, Florida, to graduate from high school, you had to have a 1.8 GPA. I graduated, the first Lockyer male to ever graduate from high school, with a 1.85. My dad basically paid my way into college. I wanted to go to college in Texas at Abilene Christian University, get a ministry degree. And so it was one of those kind of colleges, as long as the check didn't bounce, you got to go there. And started doing my college career there. And even though I was going for a ministry degree, you still had to have the math, science, the Bachelor of Arts kind of degree, had to do the other course load. And I just flunked out of college. I remember the day my dean called me into his office and he said, AC, man, we like you. You're so talented. We really think you would do great in the ministry. And he just looked at me and said, but son, you got to stop wasting your daddy's money. You are just not college material. And he said, we're going to have to let you go. And so I wanted to get married to my girlfriend then, who is now my wife now, Karen. I wanted to start that life and wanted to get married and make babies. I especially wanted to make babies. I really, really wanted to make babies. That's the fun part. But wanted to start a family and do all that good stuff. But I didn't know how I was going to be able to support her or even afford this journey. So I decided to come back home to Florida, and my dad had always been instrumental in other young men's lives, giving them ideas for businesses and things that they could possibly do to kind of start their entrepreneurial journey. So I figured I'd ask my dad, when driving home. Back then we didn't really have cell phones. So I'd stop at the rest stop, call the house collect, and call the house collect to let my parents know that I was doing well and where I was and how many hours it would be before I'd get home. It's about a 24-hour drive from Texas. And I said, Dad, I really want to start a business. I don't want to go out and get a job. Now at this point where I am today, a Lockyer male has not worked for another person in over 100 years now.
Wow.
And we've all been entrepreneurs. So I said, I want to be an entrepreneur, and do you have a business idea? Can you pitch me an idea like you've had for some of these other guys that you've been instrumental in their lives? And he said, hey, the family painter just got done prepping the house for painting, pressure washed the house, and jumped up on the roof and actually pressure washed the black streaks off the roof. I'm like, roofs get black streaks? I had never looked. At that age, 20, 21 years old, I didn't care if a roof had streaks on it or not. He goes, yeah, no, it had streaks on it, gets old looking and kind of funky. And he got up there with a pressure washer, and man, it made the roof look brand new. Seems to me, my dad said, that would make a great little business. And so I went, okay. So I'm driving the rest of the way home, thinking about roof cleaning. Now you start looking. It's like the first day you realize you could clean roofs, and you start looking around, and then all of a sudden it's like you got the disease. You're like, there's another one, and there's another one. Oh, my goodness, that one's dirty too. And I start going, wow, this is going to be cool. I'm going to start a roof cleaning business. And that was September of 1991. Got home. My dad, to help me out, bought me a $1,500 Dodge D50 pickup truck, which is basically a rebadged Mitsubishi pickup truck, and a $500 pressure washer from Sam's. And I was off to the races. And that's where I started.
That's really cool. So was there ever a question then whether you were going to be an entrepreneur or not, or did you have a big passion for the ministry? I mean, it seems like you kind of were raised to be in business for yourself.
Yeah, that was always the fallback plan. I mean, I wanted to go into the ministry. I wanted to do something. I really wanted to be a long-haired lead singer in a heavy metal rock and roll band. And that didn't work out. I was in bands for years. Being up on stage preaching on Sunday morning, to me, was like a regular gig. I'm in front of a bunch of people. I love speaking. If you've watched any of my videos, speaking is one of my things I love to do. But I knew if worse came to worse, and I just couldn't cut it anywhere else, I could be an entrepreneur and just figure out some little business and do what my dad did and what my granddad did before him, and and scratch out my path in the world being an entrepreneur. And that was very normal to me because I was raised by an entrepreneur. So I didn't have a lot of the self-limiting beliefs that a blue-collar person would or a white-collar person would. Like white-collar people, they're on the crutch of you have to go to college, you have to get a degree, you have to work your way up the corporate ladder. Blue-collar people are, hey, you can go out and be your own man and build your own life. And, they're anti-management and anti-boss. Everybody has their own self-limiting beliefs. But because I was an entrepreneur, I just saw business as just something you went out and did. I mean, it was very natural for me to do it. And so when I finally conceded that I was probably going to have to be an entrepreneur, and I decided to start my roof cleaning business, it was the way I was going to make money to be able to bring Karen back to Florida, marry her, start our family, all that kind of stuff.
So that did work out. You did bring her back to Florida and married her, huh?
Yes, yeah. We're celebrating week after next. We're going to the Isle of Capri in Italy for a week and celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you.
So with a background, I mean, you've kind of been raised around business. I assume you had a good sense for how it would work. Did you have a pretty linear track to success? I mean, you were way ahead of the game. I mean, it's, roof washing is still something that's being adopted in a lot of ways. I wouldn't say that it's totally ubiquitous in the industry. So how did that go?
Poorly. I mean, that's where everybody goes, oh, I just heard it. AC said, the backup plan was to be an entrepreneur. It's in his blood. It didn't seem like that far to reach for him. There it is. That's the thing. That's the leg up AC had. That's why AC is different. No, not at all. Not at all. I remember starting this business and pressure washing my first roof and the aggregate flying off the roof and sandblasting my shins and me going, oh, this pressure washing thing's not going to work. And if you grow up in Florida, back in the day where kids got an allowance and you actually had to work for your allowance, it wasn't just your parents gave you a cell phone and a credit card and said, leave me alone. You had to actually work for that spare money. You knew you could take, and my dad used to have me do this pretty regularly, a 2.5-gallon pump-up sprayer, put bleach in it, put some water in it, put some dishwashing detergent in it, pump it up, and go out on the porch and clean the porch and the patio and the pool deck and the indoor-outdoor furniture. I had been doing that since I was 11 years old. And so when I started pressure washing, I was like, oh, I'm a professional now. I've got a pressure washer. And I went up and pressure washed that roof. I went, this sucks. I'd much rather have a pump-up sprayer and bleach and do the roof. And that's what I started doing. And in fact, you've heard in the industry people complain about the $99 guy.
Yeah, all the time.
I was the $49 guy. I still have ads my first year in business where I advertised cleaning roofs. And I'm not talking little roofs. I'm talking, your normal 2,000 to 2,500 square foot ranch home with a hip roof on it, 2 gables. I was cleaning those roofs for $49 each. And my first year in business, I went from $49 to $99 to $199 to $299 to $499. And in my first year of business, I worked my way up to about $500 per roof. In my guinea pig neighborhood, where I did the first $49 roof, I did my last roof in there for $499. But my first year in business wasn't any different than anybody else. My first year in business, I did $83,000 the whole year. That was what my tax return was. $83,000 in gross sales. It wasn't actually my tax return. You had to adjust that. In fact, when it was all said and done, I was so poor when they filed my tax return that I got that earned income tax credit, that $1,800 the government gives you because you're so poor, you need to feed your kids. I got that the first 3 years I was in business. And, and it was incredible. And then the second year I was in business, I only did $85,000. And I look at today when we put people in the soft washing business, they're doing $250,000, $300,000 their first year with a truck working part-time. And it just blows my mind. I'm like, yeah, I did $83,000. I was charging $49 a roof. I was I was struggling and tripping, and I went from running bleach through a pressure washer, and I literally would take, when I figured out I could clean the roofs with bleach, I took my pressure washer and said, I need more bleach. I need to go faster. And so I bought a polyethylene tank like everybody does, and I hooked the pressure washer directly up to the polyethylene tank and put my water and my bleach and my soap in that and used the pressure washer pump to pump it out up onto the roof with the soap tip in. And that worked great. I could get about 4 roofs done before the pump would die. And I was back at Sam's at the returns counter going, well, this pressure washer died. Give me another one. And after about 5 pressure washers, they finally looked at me and said, son, you're doing something to these or something. We're going to stop warranting these pressure washers for you anymore. And then I had to develop, I went through everything everybody goes through today. I went to Granger, and I tried 3 or 4 different roller pumps and piston pumps and diaphragm pumps and blew all of those up before I finally found my first 2.5 gallon a minute SureFlow pump and started using those, and then built our entire technology and systems and a lot of the things that we have today off of that 2.5 gallon a minute SureFlow pump. And now we've got 5.5 gallon a minute 12 volt pumps, and we're like, woohoo, that's wonderful. But it was rocky. I mean, I was broke. I was emaciated. I had poor money management skills. I mean, my dad was an entrepreneur, and he was a multi-millionaire entrepreneur. He did very well for himself. Would start a business, run it for 5 years, flip it and sell it, start another business. I mean, I grew up in that, but I didn't pay attention. I didn't listen. I thought I was my own man. I didn't want to take any advice from my daddy. It was like, hey, thanks for the free truck and the pressure washer, and then I'm going to put you on ignore now because I'm 21 years old and I'm smarter than you. Mm-hmm. And so, no, dude, no privilege here. It was like almost anti-privilege. It was, I could have had privilege, but I screwed that pooch a long time ago.
There's a lesson in that somewhere, it sounds like.
Yeah. It was a rough 3 or 4 years, I could assure you.
Yeah, and not that anybody doubts any of that, but I mean, there's also the fact of in the early 90s, there was no internet. There was no endless resources. And not to get into the conversation about what's good and what's bad and good information and...
Hey, there goes the cat.
Yeah, we'll cut that out maybe. Or if we remember. Isn't that funny? You listen to stuff.
It's our Matrix moment. That was the Matrix.
Yeah, and if it goes back through again, then you know you're in the Matrix. But I've totally that completely wiped wherever I was headed with
You're
this
talking
conversation.
about technology. In the 90s, there was no internet, there's no YouTube, there's no resources, there's even word of mouth. Contractors would not share information with each other. You had to earn there we go, there's a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
You had to earn every bit of information that you got. Every growth spurt you had in your company, it came through fortitude and you digging it out of a hole somewhere. Not like today.
Yeah, and I think I feel like that should be factored in. It's, yes, there's more competition in some areas than maybe there was, but there's also way more opportunity, way more information, and a way faster learning curve. I mean, I just look at all the training events, all the, associations and networking opportunities and communities out there. And, what do you say about early on in business, if you could have repeated, because I want to hear from you, not my opinion. Sure. Everybody knows my opinion. Early on in business, if you could have repeated that, how would you have shortcut? How would you have kind of avoided some of those early trials, if you will?
Wow. It's funny you would say trials. Every time I grew, every time I pivoted, every time I had an innovation or a revelation or an aha moment or that next thing that propelled me always came from a trial or pain. And I think if I could change anything, I would not have avoided pain like I did early on. in the beginning. I would have hit things more head on. I would have not worried about the bad experiences or the trying experiences or the failure or the stumbling or the pride or any of that. I think I would have hit things a lot more head on and relished more in my defeats, relished more in my mistakes, looked forward to the next mistake, looked forward to the next trial, because every great or interesting story, I have. And there's so many more than what's in this book. I mean, I'm already working on the third book now, and we've got 4 more books behind that are already outlined. Everything happened at a pain point. And boy, if I could have invited more hardship, I would have probably done it.
I love that. There's a lot of wisdom, a lot of experienced wisdom in that response. So, what would be, and again, I kind of on the same line of thought. If when you look, so you've helped a lot of businesses getting going. If there's one like developable thing, not something that you kind of come into this world with,
right?
But one thing that a young in their business life entrepreneur, whether you're 20 or 50 or 60, doesn't matter, but young in the entrepreneurial journey could develop that would help them be that, intangible, what would it be?
Humility. I mean, far and away, we all, especially guys, and girls are getting this way too because our culture's changing. And like nowadays, when I get passed on the road or I get aggressive driving, 8 times out of 10, it's a girl now. And I'm like, when did that change? Have you noticed that? It's crazy. But so you can't even really say it's a guy thing anymore. It's a human being thing that we're prideful, we're arrogant, we want to be our own person, we want to come up our own way, we want to reinvent the wheel, and we don't want to embrace other people's ideas. And we question, and we're the devil's advocate, and we're critical, and sometimes we don't believe people. Oh, it's too good to be true. Sometimes things are true. Sometimes wisdom is sage. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you need to just throw your hands up in the air and just be caught up and swept up in it and just execute a model. And the biggest roadblock I see when I'm coaching entrepreneurs, when I'm coaching people to be successful, is them second guessing. They invite people into their lives to have influence on their lives, and then they second guess everything they tell them and continue to reinvent the wheel. And it is tragic. It takes, in our organization, Softwash Systems, I can get you to $1 million in 18 months. In 18 months. I mean, when I opened up our Delray Beach branch down in Delray with Mallard Systems, from the day we conceived of it, the day we decided to do it, to the day we put the key in the door and opened it, rented the facility, bought the trucks, wrapped the trucks, built the equipment, put the equipment in the back, hired the employees, trained the employees, decorated the office, bought the furniture, set the whole place up, got the bleach tank installed, the whole process, from the day we thought about it to the day we did it, was 90 days. Put the key in the door. Open the door, and in the first month, it did $170,000. In the year 2000, adjust that for inflation. And I know how to do that. I could take anybody, and if they're humble and they're loose clay and they're ready to be formed, I could take them from zero to an excess of $1 million company in 4 months if you let me do it. Certainly 18 months. 18 months, I can do it to pretty much anybody. But they won't do it. It takes me usually 3 years to break through that shell with them to get them to finally go, I've tried every other way, AC, I'm just going to execute the model. And I'm like, it's about freaking time.
So would a more humble 21-year-old AC have taken that approach to his dad who'd been more successful in business? And
it's tough to do it at 21 years old.
Yeah.
It's easier to do it at 30. I mean, AC at 25 already had 2 kids and a wife and a $1 million business. AC at 30 had a $4.8 million business and kids in elementary school. as you get older, you start to get more humble. At 21, it's really hard to do it. It's not impossible. Nowadays, I guess the younger you can get them, the less screwed up they are by the time you get them. But it's tough, man. Humility, boy, we are all our own worst enemies. We're our biggest competitors. We're our harshest critic. We got to get out of our own heads and just run alongside people that are already doing it. That is the quickest way to success.
I love that. It's funny. I've had some conversations here recently with young entrepreneurs, and it's a very different conversation with somebody who is in their early to mid 20s versus somebody, 15 years further down the road in the way they talk. And I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but there becomes that point where they're like, I'm still figuring it out.
Right.
The 40, 50-year-old entrepreneur says, hey, I'm just figuring this out. Yeah, it looks like it's working really good. We got a lot to figure out. And the 25-year-old guy's like, yeah, we're pretty,
Yeah, I'm just going to automate everything. And I'm going to hire all my friends because they're bright and talented. And, we're going to do all this business online. And, we're going to make money when we sleep. And you just watch me. I saw a YouTube video once.
Right.
And you're just like, dude,
Right. I love it. So there you were. First few years, it sounded like, you're just grinding. What was the breakthrough that allowed you to, because, starting first couple of years, $80,000, $100,000 in revenue, and then you get to almost a $5 million company. Where was the breakthrough in that? How did that happen?
So about my third year in business, I started figuring it out. I get the brand down really good. I've got the list of services well, and my dad's been breathing life into me. If I had an upper foot over anybody else, I had at least my dad as a coach and a mentor. And even though I didn't pay attention to him half the time, every once in a while he did say something. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go, that sounded pretty smart. I should probably do that. So, I started getting things going, but I was still stuck on the truck. That's the thing. How do you get off the tools? How do you get off the wand? How do you get out of the truck? And I was out doing everything. I was wearing the sales hat, the marketing hat, the production hat, the dispatch hat, the bookkeeper hat. And so finally, I had built things up to where I'm getting a lot of calls coming into the company. I'm getting a lot of business. I can't handle it all. I'm starting to do about $250,000 to $300,000 just by myself in my truck. I'm starting to make a pretty good income. But for me, early on, I had set some pretty defined margins in place, parameters in place. I only worked Monday through Friday. I only worked from 7 in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. I did not miss church on Wednesday night. I did not miss church on Sunday morning. I did not miss a kid's activity. So I only had so many hours, and I wasn't willing to give that up. And so I was getting run pretty ragged. About that time, my dad had sold another one of his companies. And he and I were sitting down after dinner one night, and I said, Dad, you just sold your company. What are you going to do next? He said, well, I haven't figured it out yet. I said, Dad, can you come in this and help me out? I said, I've got a tiger by the tail. This thing's happening. It's moving. But I can't do it all by myself. And I said, I'm having a hard time hiring people. I keep hiring assistant techs. They last 3 or 4 months. They bounce out. I hire the next one. They last 3 or 4 months. They bounce out. I finally got a lead tech, and I got off the truck for a while, and then he got a better job. I went through everything everybody else goes through right now. And so my dad said, okay, son, I'll come into the business with you. And so he came into the business, and he started acting like a CEO, basically a full-time coach. He never, ever picked up a wand, didn't do any advertising. He basically sat in a desk, and we used to kind of tease and say he dictated and delegated. Well, that's kind of what CEOs do, And so he started coaching me through this. He said, you're not allowed to be on the truck anymore. I'm moving you to sales, and we're going to hire some technicians, and we're going to put a second truck on the road. And he started helping me make those big moves before there was really coaching organizations. Now, today, you have like Brandon Vaughn's Conquer or Howard Partridge's Phenomenal Products. There are coaching organizations out there that you can hire Even if your dad sucks, and a lot of us had daddy issues. Let's say your dad sucks and you don't have a great dad like I had that could coach you through this stuff. You could buy one. And you couldn't do that before. You could jump on and watch podcasts, and you couldn't do that before. There's so many resources. But for me, I did that 83,000, 85,000, then about 200 and something thousand. Then the fourth year was about 390,000. That's when Dad came in with me. And then we just started adding trucks. And we went from day one in the business, I started October of 1991, to October of 1998, we were at about $2.4 million. And then by the year 2000, we were at $4.8 million a year in 3 branches in Florida. That's a basically 8.5 year run. We went from owner-operator, $83,000 a year, to $4.8 million a year inside of 8.5 years. And I really accredit it to getting that older, mature voice in my life speaking to me. And because we were now business partners, I couldn't ignore him. He wasn't Dad. He was Al. And, and Al was the CEO, and Al was my boss. And that's how we kind of set it up. So I had accountability. And now I had to execute the desires of my CEO. And he started helping me make those big moves. One time, we would never allow ourselves to get more than 3 days booked out. Everybody talks about being booked out 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Our personal limit was 3 days. If we were booked out more than 3 days, we put another truck on the road.
Wow. That's a big lot to bite off.
Yeah.
So you described, this is really, really interesting, the way that you kind of described Coach Al, mm-hmm. and CEO Al as being similar things. When we're looking at a business that's run by a real CEO, which is what everyone has to aspire to at some point if they want to grow, how much of being a great CEO is being a coach of your leaders?
Well, that's huge. Like Tom Ziegler right now, the Ziegler Corporation just started a new program called Coach Leaders. So back in the day, back in the 50s and 60s, probably 40s and 50s, you had military leaders, like general leaders, people that would come in and through leadership, they would dictate, delegate, tell people what to do. They were like my way or the highway, and they were pushers. And then that kind of gave way to the mayoral type of leader. And they were the type of leader that would create a community and keep everybody safe and kind of inspire people to leadership. And then the kind of the trend 30 years ago or so, 20 years ago or so, were servant leaders. And, leadership through servant and being humble and really, just leadership through example in your organization. And now it's coach leaders. And coach leaders are those people that call you higher and work on your skills and help you develop yourself personally. And really, when I look at becoming the person that I am today and the businesses I own today, which it's just unbelievable when I look at what I own now, it sometimes it blows me away. It's all about developing you. You are your most important asset in your company. You're going to be the person that leads everybody else in your organization. You're going to become everybody in your organization's coach. You're going to be the one that helps them achieve their life's goals and dreams and helps them to aspire and helps them put together 1-year plans, 5-year plans, 10-year plans. It's your job to develop your people. If you develop your people and invest in your people, and then you share with them the business model or the game that you want them to play, they'll take it and they'll run with the ball. And then as a CEO, you're really doing very little in your company that has to do with the product or the thing that you sell. You're really focusing the most on developing your people and bringing new players onto your team and working on all of that.
One of the things that, we really make that is in our core belief system at Bergflow is that the company, everything is teams. People are the X factor, and the company with the best team wins.
Yes.
So it's very interesting to hear, one, how that is such a core belief in what you've done and experiencing so much success and growth in your businesses, and what you experienced, in how you got there, and then how you're passing it on. So that's very cool. So, not to like jump into a painful moment, but
Sure.
like you said, there's a lot to learn from the tough things. You grew the business really big. It sounds like it was on fire. What happened? Why did it fall apart? And I don't know this story at all. So
Yeah. Well, some of it is in the book, and
yeah.
but it really got to the point with my dad and I where two bulls could no longer occupy the same hill. So I did start to come into my own. I did start to have my own ideas. I did start to develop as a person, and some of his management techniques could be described as old school, older management techniques. I mean, so much has changed in the last 30 years on how you grow and inspire and manage people. And I had different ideas, company structure ideas, just, ideas on margin, ideas on when we should take a break from the business or go out and recreate so that we can recreate ourselves. And hey, we were starting to have a lot of rubs and difference of opinion on how money and finances should go in the business. And so we just got to the point where we had a big blow up, and we decided to save our relationship that we should split the company. And so my dad took all of the residential customers and kept the name Mallard Systems and serviced the residential customers. I took all the commercial customers and renamed that company TerraClean and serviced the commercial customers. And we literally put a painted line down the middle of the building, and this was his side of the building, this was my side of the building. We split the baby, so to speak, and I operated my business according to the ideals that I thought the business should be run, the management style, how the people were managed, and teams and all. And he did his own thing, and that was a tough era. But we did it. We split the baby. About 6 months into that, he decided he didn't want to own the company anymore, so he sold his side, the Mallard Systems side, and sold that off. I retained TerraClean and ran that for a number of years. Ran it almost as a absentee owner. It was definitely a turnkey business at that point, which my dad never was able to achieve. He had to be in his desk every day working in the company. I didn't want that. I wanted to fish 150 days a year. And after that painful breakup, I started fishing 150 days a year and enjoying my business. I mean, Mallard Systems was $4.8 million a year. And because both my dad and I's beaks were in the till, we made about 150 grand a year each. We separated the businesses, and I ran TerraClean the way I wanted to run it. And I started taking home a $250,000 a year package, and fished 150 days a year, and fished so much that I was watching TV one day and watching this redfish tournament trail for redfish fishing, and I went, man, I'd like to do this. I think I'm as good as these guys. And at the end of the show, it says, hey, if you think you could fish the redfish tour, join us. So I went, hey, I'm going to join them. And so I joined the redfish tour, and I won the national championship my rookie season. And me and my fishing partner, Thresher Clear, because you fish as a team, two people, when you're fishing the redfish tour. And Thresher was the poler, and I was the angler. And he pushed the boat around and showed me where the fish were. And then I'd make the perfect cast to catch the fish. And we worked as a team. It's more of a team sport when you fish redfish. And we won the national championship our rookie year. We just came in and just hammered it. And so it was wonderful. Well, then, my dad got into real estate speculation and stuff like that, and we all know what happened to the real estate market in 2009. And so my dad's world was blowing up on him. And so he comes to me and he says, hey, son, we're older, we're wiser. Looks like you got a tiger by the tail. Your business is growing. And I'm like, yeah, I could really use some help again. And, so my dad said, hey, listen, we're older, we're wiser. We've learned how to do things together and not fight and all. Let me come back into the business and let me help you out. So I pulled him back into the business, and man, it wasn't 6 months. And just bad stuff was going on. Our relationship, the rub, everything was just happening again, except just much more accelerated. And it got to the point where just some really bad stuff happened. And like Joseph fleeing from Potiphar's home, running away from Potiphar's wife, I had to flee my business literally and left my cloak in my dad's hand, so to speak, and had to leave the business, turn the business over to my dad, went broke down to my last $250, and lost my house, lost my cars, lost my fishing boats, lost my convertible Mustang, lost everything except for my wife and my kids, the important stuff. And boy, it was horrible. It was painful. I just remember crying. I remember my friend Roy Reed coming, and you can read some of the stuff in the book, and Kevin Hypes and Dan Holland and some of the people who were in my life back then trying to encourage me and trying to help me with reinventing myself. And at first it wasn't Softwash Systems. It was Professional Business Guide, and it was me consulting and coaching people and doing that, and that got the income back going. And but that horrible breakup, the point of that is that awful thing. I mean, I didn't talk to my dad for 7 years after that. I went broke down in my last $250. I never had to file for bankruptcy. I honored all my debts. I just pulled the plow and toughed my way through the whole thing. But all these clients that I was consulting kept on saying, AC, I want to have a baby Mallard Systems. I want to build a company just like you. I want to do exactly what you did. And I'm like, no. You don't want to do that. Pat Clark was one of them. And I'm like, no, it was awful. It was hell. I never want to do that again. I never want to have another employee ever again. And but I kept getting pushed back into it. And, so we started Softwash Systems to give people the equipment like I had and the chemicals like I had. And actually, Michael Hinderleiter with PowerWash.com was actually my business partner, my first business partner in that. And he helped me start the business, and we were going to do it together. Then he had his own family junk going on in a lawsuit with Delco and the pressure washing company, and there were some things that were going on in his life that he had too many irons in the fire. And he says, "Here, AC, here's Softwash Systems back." And I'm like, okay. And I'm doing pretty good consulting. Now I'm starting to make a good living consulting. And get this thing called Softwash Systems back in my hands. And I didn't want to have employees. I didn't want to do any of that. But it was turning about $2,500 a month in profit. And that's about what the kid's college bill was. Mm-hmm. So I went, well, I'll run this thing on the side, like a little side hustle, and it'll pay the college bill. But I'm going to do business consulting because that's what I really like doing. And all of that 1 year period of time that my life blew up, everything collapsed, started doing the consulting and then started doing the Softwash Systems thing, and it got handed back to me. That whole 12 months was just God putting me back into this business because it's where I had authority, it's where I had influence, it's where people wanted my tools and resources. And so Softwash Systems got born from all of that adversity. And I went from living in what I called my 5-mile gerbil track. I mean, my office, my kids' school, my church, and my house were in a 5-mile bubble, and I would just do this every day, and do this every day, and do this every day. And God just came in and went, and just obliterated my 5-mile gerbil track that I loved. Every once in a while, I'd spin off the gerbil track and go fish a tournament, and stuff like that. But that was my life, and He just obliterated it. And now I have international impact. I've helped tens of thousands of people in business. I can directly trace back to my influence and my efforts in this industry to nearly $1 billion in revenues that have been created for people in this industry because of that blow up. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It sucked and it was painful, but it was the catalyst that needed to happen to put me where I really needed to be today.
Man, what a story. I don't even know. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to jump back in too many of those points, but it's amazing how we're faced, again, kind of what we call them here is pivot points.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still up to you. It was, what you did with it. And it's not always easy to crawl out of those tough times. So somebody listens to this podcast and maybe they're going through that in their life. Maybe it's personal, maybe it's business, maybe it's both. What do you tell them?
Man, you're going to get 10 years down the road and it ain't going to be nothing but a thing, and it's going to be a blip on your radar. These things are tough, and they can eat you alive, and it can be the end if you let it be the end. But if you don't mind 6 months of pain and putting your head down and dealing with a little bit of darkness in your life, if you can tough through those things, it is always brighter and more beautiful on the other side. And we are all shaped by fire. We are forged in fire. And the Bible says iron sharpens iron like one man sharpens another. You need those things in your life and the people in your life and these trials in your life to forge you into the person that you're going to be one day. Don't take the easy road. Don't take the easy path. Take the path that's less traveled. Take the hard road. Challenge yourself. Don't fear adversity, because all of the great and successful people on this earth all have a story. Don't cheat yourself with the story. Embrace it. Head directly into the storm.
I'm not going to add anything to that. So I've done a terrible job of being a promoter and a helper here. You have a book that has recently come out.
Yep.
Tell me just a little bit about the book. I know they can hear some of these stories. They can learn some things. Tell me about what inspired the book and what you hope to achieve through it.
Well, so, like every self-important person that thinks that their story is the greatest. The first book you always want to write is an autobiography. And you always want to write an autobiography, and nobody even knows who you are. Nobody knows who I am. I mean, in the pressure washing world, some people know who I am. I run to people all the time who are like, who are you? Where have you been? And I love your stuff. And it's just funny. But you want to write an autobiography, and that's very self-indulgent. So when my publishing company reached out to me and wanted to do this deal, and we started working on this stuff, I said, I want to write an autobiography because I want to get my story out there, because there's already kind of people copying what I've been doing and giving credit to other people for things that I've done and all. I said, I need to get that out there. And they just looked at me and went, oh, that's so boring. Nobody wants to hear that, AC. Nobody knows who you are. So what we decided to do is we decided to take one of my classes I do, and it's called the 5 Keys to Pattern Success. And what you have is in your 5 keys to pattern success, and you use your hand to remind you, is the first key is to be deliberate. The second key is to execute. The third key is to analyze. The fourth key is to replicate. And the fifth key is to systemize. And this is a personal kind of system that I've had in my business life and my personal life. So what we decided to do with this book, The 5 Keys to Pattern Success, there's an introductory section and a closing section, but in between that there's 5 sections, and the 5 sections are be deliberate, execute, analyze, replicate, systemize. And in those sections, each section, I introduce the key, like be deliberate. I tell a story in my life of when I was deliberate, and then I introduce a personal life or business system that allows you to be more productive in being deliberate. So every single one of the sections has the introduction of the key, the story behind the key, and then a business system that goes along with the key. And so you do get to learn a little bit about me. You do get to hear about some of those stories like I alluded to today, and you get to see who I am as a person, but you also get to see this 5 keys business success tool that I use. and life success tool. It's how I met and married my wife. It's how I won the Redfish Tour National Championship my rookie season. It's how I started all of my companies. It's how I've had this almost Forrest Gump kind of life. I could go on and tell you story after story after story that aren't even in here. And you would go, oh, come on, AC. The BS is getting thick here. Let me go get some boots. You did not do that. I'm like, no, I've done that. And you're like, you got to be kidding me. And it's just because of these 5 little steps I do in my life, and it's led to incredible success. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to get those 5 little keys to replicating and patterning success over and over in your life and get it out to people so that they can start replicating success and patterning success over and over in their lives and be able to achieve all their life's goals and dreams by reading a little 200-page book.
Very cool, very cool. So there's some applicable. It's a handbook. There's a manual in there, but then you also got to tell a little bit of your story too. So very cool. And the stories are incredible. I hope we get to do this again because I want to hear more of them. Man, I appreciate your time. I assume people
Thanks.
can find your book on Amazon and those kinds of.
Yeah, Amazon, all the major booksellers. If you can buy it through Amazon, that would be great. We're working on achieving bestseller status on Amazon. It's kind of cool. We sold almost 300 books the first month, which is,
Awesome.
I went to my publisher and I said, is that pretty good? And they went, are you kidding me? 300 books for a nobody? Because I'm a nobody. I'm a roof cleaner from Orlando, Florida, guys. It's just silly to think about. A roof cleaner from Orlando, Florida is now a published author, traveling the world, eating $250 meals in Europe, with a worldwide impact because he figured out a cool way to spray bleach on a building. And that can be you too. You're only 5 steps away from achieving all of your life's goals and dreams and being able to replicate that over and over and over again. And you can have a beautiful, wonderful life and bless a lot of people along the way.
Very cool. Well, thank you again. Man, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the stories. I know that whoever, hears this and hears some of this journey will be inspired by it.
Thank you.
Anything else that people need to know? I guess they can find Softwash Systems online if you are interested, if you are wanting to start that kind of business. And then for all the rest of us entrepreneurs, check out the book, The 5 Keys to Pattern Success. AC, it's been real, man. I hope we get to do this again.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. It's just awesome.
All right, guys. Well, that's another episode. I hope to see you guys back next time. All right.